To the Planning Commission Citizen Advisory Committee meeting to order. I'm doing my best. It's my first time, so bear with me. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sue, we can have a roll call.
Commissioner Cadwalder.
Here.
Commissioner Chambers.
Here.
Commissioner Holst. Here. Commissioner Plank.
Here.
Commissioner Barnett.
Here.
And Vice Chair Gadula.
Here.
Vice Chair,
Yes, sir.
I would make a motion to move new business in front of old business, just so we can get the developers up and running and
Understood.
out of here quicker.
Yep. Understood.
So there should be a motion to that effect for number 2 then to approve. So if someone should make a motion to approve the agenda with that change, that's what you're suggesting, Mr. Chambers?
Yes, sir. So I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Ian.
I'll support it.
Okay. Approval of moving new before old business. Approval of the minutes for.
We need to have a motion, or a vote on the motion.
Can we have a vote for new before old?
I'll make that motion.
I can second it.
Sue?
Commissioner Cadwalder.
Yes.
Commissioner Chambers.
Yes.
Commissioner Holst. Yes. Commissioner Plank.
Yes.
Commissioner Barnett.
Yes.
And Vice Chair Gadula.
Yes.
Vice Chair Gadula, could we please have an excuse of absence as well for
Yeah.
Chair Ellis?
I'll make a motion that we excuse Chair Ellis.
I can second it.
Thank you, ma'am, Sue. Alrighty.
We need to have a vote on that too.
Pardon?
We have a vote on that one too.
Oh. Sue, vote on absence.
Commissioner Cadwalder.
Yes.
Commissioner Chambers.
Yes.
Commissioner Holst. Yes. Commissioner Plank.
Yes.
Commissioner Barnett.
Yes.
And Vice Chair Gadula.
Yes. Alright. Approval minutes now, Andy?
Yep.
Alright, thank you.
No problem.
Is there a motion for approval of the minutes of the previous meetings?
I'll make that motion.
I can support.
Sue? Vote.
Commissioner Cadwalder.
Yes.
Commissioner Chambers.
Yes.
Commissioner Holst. Yes. Commissioner Plank.
Yep.
Commissioner Barnett.
Yes.
And Vice Chair Gadula.
Yes. Now, public comments and communications concerning items not on the agenda tonight. Please come up and state your name. Address.
Peggy Covert. I overstayed my welcome last time, so I went over my time. But I had one more comment that I wanted to make concerning the development up there on North Washington. My concern is I am thrilled that they're willing to leave the common area as natural. But my concern is, I know that it was put into the minutes to state that nothing can be done to the natural area at all. Well, my concern is, in my area, in my wooded area, garlic mustard, which is very invasive and can really cause problems, and now I have discovered this Oriental bittersweet has actually destroyed an entire section of my woods. And it's a vine that wraps around, it's like a boa constrictor. It'll wrap around and literally strangle the trees, bring them down, and then kill anything else that it wraps around. And so I'd like to make a suggestion that something be added to it or put into that document to make it okay for if they find invasives in that area, to be able to have somebody go in and take care of them or something. Because once those things really start spreading, they just take over. And I was shocked. The first time that I'd seen that Oriental bittersweet, I think was maybe 3 years ago. And I really got into my woods this year to find it and see what was going on with it. And I had no idea. Once we got that cut out of there, it's a whole big section that's just gone. It's just empty.
There's a group of people, and forgive me, I can't remember who they were, that were here that you can get in contact with. And
I believe it's the Michigan State
Michigan
Extension
State.
Office.
yes, and they will come in and verify, and they have the jurisdiction to eradicate or
Really?
remove.
So that's Michigan State Extension?
It's like a
Oh,
conservation
really?
district.
Okay.
So that would be your best avenue.
I will do that. But
And they were very passionate about finding a lot of invasive species
Great.
to eradicate or to start the process, I should
Okay.
say.
That's
So
great.
that would be your best avenue.
Yeah, for mine, but
Yeah.
what my concern is for that other, for the development.
If it's there, they're gonna inform those people, I would assume.
Oh, would
Would you,
they?
Andy?
Yeah, well, so the other thing that I will add to that is that, so your motion was that there wasn't to be any activity in the floodplain. And I think they're allowed to do a little bit in the upland area that's not in the floodplain. We wouldn't consider the removal of invasive species to be like activity that would be prohibited in that
Really?
area.
Okay.
Or if there was like a, dead tree that was gonna fall on somebody's house or something like that, that would be fine if they took something like that out. What the motion is really doing is just making it so we're not seeing, a bunch of, clear cutting and buildings going up back there and stuff like that. So just kind of basic routine maintenance of that natural area, I think would be fine, and we wouldn't have an issue with that.
Because it didn't sound like that one, but yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
May I give you just some handouts that just are real quick, one page, just to show,
Yeah.
just to show how that Oriental Bittersweet, just how really bad it is. Is that enough? I got one more.
If you have one more, that's all we need for the commission.
Is it? Okay,
Yeah,
good.
perfect.
Okay,
But
thank you.
yeah, hey,
Yeah,
call them
I will
and
definitely
get
do
in
that.
contact with them.
I will definitely do that, and then I'll just alert them, because I haven't been over on that property at all for, the development property for several years. So I have no idea, but somebody was saying that they thought that they'd seen something like that over closer to the Atwood building, so I don't know. And I don't know where it ever came from in the first place. Boy, it sure got me in the woods. So, thank you, and thanks for the information, too.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? We'll now close that portion of this meeting. So now we're moving on to new business. 301 West Main Street. And Representative, please approach the podium, give us a little background or what have you.
Good evening, everyone. Brett Slagle, BGR Investments. We're here looking for approval of our site plan for the renovation of 301 and 303 East Main, the former Larkins building is what it's commonly known as. I think we submitted the existing site plan along with the proposed site plan, so you can kind of see what it looks like now and what we're proposing to change. I think everybody has a copy of all that, so just here tonight to see if we can get that approved and answer any questions you might have about what's going on there. I do have Tim Driscoll, he's going to be our general contractor on the project, and his company did the designs and everything, so I may have to go to him for any technical answers or something that I'm not aware of, but I can come answer most everything else.
Understood. Commissioners, any questions right off the bat? All right. Andy, should we proceed?
Yeah, so we prepared a memo, so this is a simple site plan review. They're proposing offices, and then upstairs, is it one or two? Four residences upstairs. So both of those uses are permitted by right in your downtown district. Most of it is just reuse of the existing building. There are a few things here that basically brought it to the Planning Commission's attention. One is that this driveway here onto Main Street is going to be slightly relocated a little bit farther to the west, I believe, than it currently is.
I think we're actually moving to the east.
Are you? Okay. There's also a little bit of demo going on of the existing deck, and then there's a small addition going on here. So sort of all of those things together to us felt like something that we should bring in front of the planning commission. So we did prepare a brief memorandum to the planning commission here that we will review. So there's a total of 2,400 square feet of ground floor leased business space and 2,300 square feet of residential space on the second floor. There's going to be 9 parking spaces in that small lot. The other observation that we would make with respect to parking is that obviously, we're pretty flexible when it comes to parking downtown. We allow applicants to count public parking spaces within 400 feet of the property towards that required minimum for parking, and obviously there's quite a bit of it publicly available within 400 feet. So we don't have any significant concerns with respect to parking. For the project itself, we do note 2 things on the site plan. One is that with the slight movement of this driveway, that probably requires a permit from MDOT. I'm not sure if you've reached out to them yet.
I believe that's in process.
Okay. And then the other thing that we note is that there's some slight encroachment into the right-of-way right here in the parking lot, and then the existing building. This isn't the city's jurisdiction, again, because it's MDOT right-of-way. I don't know if they require some kind of like encroachment permit or something like that. But if they do, that's something that you would want to have clarified with them. I'm less concerned about the building because it's been there for a long time than I am about this parking area. So that would be something to address with them and provide the city with either a permit or something from them that says, yeah, we don't care, this is fine. And those were the only kind of major and potentially major issues, I guess, here with the plan. As I mentioned, the uses are permitted by right. The building is existing, and we don't have any setback requirements in the downtown in terms of front yards or side yards, because we honestly want things to be built up to the street as close as possible. So with our site plan review standards, I'll just walk through those briefly. The first one asks about if the use would affect the public health, safety, or welfare, and the uses and structures shall be planned to take into account topography, size of the property, etc. We believe that this standard is met. Again, this is an existing reuse of a building for uses that frankly we want to see downtown, residences and offices. It's compatible with the surrounding area. Item B discusses safe, convenient, uncongested, and well-defined vehicular and pedestrian circulation. Drive, streets, etc. shall promote safe and efficient traffic operations within the city. There's not a significant impact to circulation here. Obviously, there's an existing driveway. They're moving that a little bit. We might see a little more activity with the parking lot here, and there's going to be a dumpster located in that little area as well, so there'd be a little bit of traffic there. But it's not significant enough in our approval, in our opinion, to cause any significant problems. Item C says that the arrangement of public or private vehicular and pedestrian connections to existing or planned streets shall be planned to provide a safe and efficient circulation system, which we've talked about already a little bit. Again, it's not a significant material change to the site in our view. D talks about the removal or alteration of significant natural features, which there aren't any because it's a developed site downtown. E requires assurance that the requirements of the city would be met, and obviously with the caveat that they would have to obtain additional permits from MDOT and anyone else as necessary. That could be addressed as a condition of approval. And then standard F discusses the spirit of the ordinance and the master plan. And the existing master plan has this area in the downtown, which again encourages multi-story mixed-use buildings, residences over retail or office. So again, we don't have any concerns here. We did recommend approval of the site. Oh yeah, so this is also in the floodplain. Most of these standards don't apply because again, we're not talking about an existing. We're not talking about a brand new building. They're not bringing in any fill or anything like that. We note here that any expanded or replaced water supplies, sanitary sewer systems, etc., will need to be able to eliminate infiltration of floodwaters. The requirements of the underlying zoning district would have to be met, which they would be, and then they would have to obtain any permits from Eagle with respect to the floodplain area. Again, no major concerns here, but because it is in the floodplain, this underlying overlay district does apply. So we did recommend approval with a handful of conditions. Most of these are conditions that go on virtually every site plan. The only additional changes here is that we have some under 4 and 5 and 6. We address those potential, flood zone, floodplain items that we discussed. And then under item 7, we had a condition that they would need to get a permit for the driveway, and that any sort of encroachment permit should one be required. It could be that they aren't going to require anything, but if they do, we would want to have that completed and have a copy turned into the city. Overall, this is it's a reuse of a building downtown, so we think it's a good idea. We like these kinds of projects in general. So again, we've recommended approval. This is a by right site plan review, so we can certainly entertain public comments, but there's no notice public hearing this evening. And so I guess from there, Mr. Vice Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you for any questions.
Sure. Commissioners, any questions?
Yeah, I got one on C. The pedestrian connections, your future tenant has already posted, Brett, that they're going to be moving in 2025, and that particular tenant has a tendency to put totes, blankets, and stuff out on the sidewalk. That is the narrowest part of our sidewalk system, and I can't see how they can do that and maintain a safe flow of pedestrians coming down our main street. So I would like to at least put that in that the sidewalk, other than signage, has to remain clear right there.
I mean, all I can really say to that is our tenants will be required to abide by local ordinances. If they're breaking some sort of ordinance, they'll be forced to comply. I wasn't aware of that. If they're doing it now, are they allowed to do it now?
Where they're at, they have the space for accessibility, ADA compliance to get people through their area. You're at 8 feet. So
I have to admit that was something I didn't expect to come up, but like I said,
I'm just bringing it up because we're there, we see it. We have a ton of people now walking our city, especially with the social district and stuff. I don't want to see people walking out because there is no parking there. So they're walking out into live traffic if they have to go around. So that to me is an issue.
I will mention it to them.
For what it's worth too, there is something in zoning that addresses like outdoor displays in the downtown. I want to say there's a minimum of 6 feet required for kind of safe passage. But you could also, if you were so inclined, add a condition to address, any kind of displays along Main Street here.
Is the sidewalk on Broadway wider?
No,
that they
it's
could-
narrower.
okay.
Yeah, it's even narrower. And you can kind of see on the drawing right here, so on Broadway,
Oh, yeah.
there's this little strip right here. And on Main Street, it's a little bit wider, but again, there's street lights and stuff that,
Yeah.
so even when if there's 8 feet from the curb to here, Marty, is this the part you're talking about?
Yeah, that's very narrow.
Yeah, so I mean, even with 8 feet, there's still some obstacles here that are just part of the city's infrastructure that,
Yeah, we got lights and
so it
Are
might
you
be
saying they're
something.
like merchandising out there, like a sidewalk sale kind of thing? or
Yeah,
something?
they've regularly got like clothing racks and stuff outside on the sidewalks.
Okay, we'll make sure we address that with them and make sure we.
They'd have to go down the side road. Down the other side.
well, there's no.
Well, that's what they're
room on that
saying,
either.
that's
It's not,
what
even here, they've only got about 4 feet or something on the side. And this isn't the most conducive to that. If they're gonna wanna do a sidewalk display, they're gonna want it to be on Main Street. I would wager that they don't want it on the high traffic, high visibility.
But I think as a building owner, you should be well aware of it, right? When you are hashing it out and doing what we all do as building owners, you can address it. We do have a lot of walkability in our downtown, and that's kind of important.
I agree. So I'll address that with them and make sure we're doing that in the proper way.
I actually have a question about the parking spaces. Were these intended to be like marked as used for just the building? Or is it going to be open for parking?
They'll be private use only.
So it's for just the residents then? Okay, so not even for people frequenting the store, I guess?
There'll be designated spaces for the tenants. We did that over behind 312, and it's been a good selling point when you bring a tenant in and you can tell them, you know, these spaces are yours, and actually have them numbered, and when they sign their lease, they get those spaces, and it's a selling point when somebody can live downtown and not have to fight for parking.
Sure.
So we'll do the same thing there. There'll be 4 apartments upstairs. Each apartment will have their own dedicated space. There'll be some that will be left for guests. If they have overnight guests or something, there'll be some overflow parking for that. And then for the retail space downstairs, it can be employee parking or something like that. But it's not going to be intended to be
Okay, for consumer
just
parking?
general
Okay.
customer parking. There's a plethora of parking down
Sure.
Broadway there
Yeah.
for that type of
My concern was going to be traffic in and out of that lot, but if it's going to be mostly residents, that's going to be pretty.
And that's
minimal
part of it, too.
Traffic in and out of the lot.
It is
so-
pretty close to the intersection down
Right.
there, so we don't want a lot of traffic coming in and out of there.
Right, I regularly use Broadway, so I know how difficult it is even to turn out of there. And being
It's
that
tough
much
turn left
closer
there.
to the
Yeah.
intersection, I was afraid it was going to be more difficult, but if it's going to be just the residents or, you know, a few staff members, I think that'll be much less traffic than, you know, a consumer trying to use the retail space, you know, every 30 minutes or something going in and out. So, thank you.
And you're going to use the same downstairs service that you're using here?
Like the same company.
Yeah, because Larkin's always complained that the company he used, they had to pull in and then back out, back onto Main Street. So I would like to suggest that you work with whoever you get, that they have a rear load, so they're not backing back out onto Main Street.
So the way I addressed that before, because we did kind of keep it open for a while after we bought it, we actually got a different style of dumpster that was lighter. It was made out of plastic. It was smaller, and it was actually very easy to move. So they could actually come in and grab it and wheel it out to the street without having to pull in and pull back out, because trying to get in there and then back out on Main Street it's almost impossible, really, because the driver can't see. So we kind of address that in a different way. Being that it's not going to be a restaurant use, you're talking 4 small apartments in a retail space that's probably not going to have heavy waste. We should be able to get away with that same type of solution where it's a smaller receptacle, and I'm hoping to not even really have a truck pulling in there just because of that.
Sounds good to me.
That alleviates my second concern as well. Thank you.
Is there any public comment on the 301 West Main Street property? Commissioners, no other questions?
I'm good.
Well, I agree, Andy. I think it's a great use of the property too. Should we make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we approve the site plan.
Second.
Mr. Chambers, do you want to include the 7 recommended conditions of approval from our staff report?
Yes, I
Okay.
Thank
That's
you.
why we're bringing Andy.
Second again. Sue, vote.
Commissioner Cadwalder,
Yes.
Commissioner Chambers,
Yes.
Commissioner Holst,
Yes.
Commissioner Plank,
Yes.
Commissioner Barnett,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Kadula.
Yes. Congratulations, sir.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. And thanks for the agenda adjustment.
Thank you. All right.
Old business, Andy. Master plan?
Master plan, so at the last meeting, we reviewed the draft goals and objectives, and now we are looking at the future land use map. So this is a fairly important chapter. As you know, when we look at special uses, when we look at rezoning requests, one of the first things that we do is flip to the master plan, read through the goals and objectives, and often we'll take a pretty close look at the future land use map. So your existing plan has one. We have proposed a fair number of adjustments to that map. You know, it's from 2007, based both on just kind of the existing use of the properties now, and also how it's developed, some of the decisions that you've made over the years, and then also kind of what we anticipate and what kind of makes sense for future uses of property. So this map that we have on the screen here is very much a draft, so this, again, and I encourage you, please feel free to tell me to edit, change, we can do whatever you want. But this is kind of what our initial first crack at this, based on our experience here and what we know and working with you and what we heard from the public during all of the engagement that we did. Came up with a map, something like this. So let's kind of walk through each of the designations and what they mean. So along with this, we sent you this narrative text that has some introductory language here that sort of explains what the future land use map is and how it works. Kind of the most important takeaway from this is that sometimes there is confusion between the zoning map and the future land use map. And just understand that, you know, zoning is how the properties are regulated today in the zoning ordinance. So the zoning map is law. Everyone is in some kind of a zoning district, and there are certain things that you can't do within each of those zone districts. The future land use map is looking ahead 20 or 30 or more years to sort of look at how the city might build out or might change or might evolve. And so some of these future land use designations might not be the same as what their current zoning classification is. And you'll see that some of the future land use designations or those categories aren't the same as the zoning district. So we don't have, an R1 future land use category on the map. We use a different term. But again, so when you look at this map, think long-term development, don't think what it is right now, although that does certainly influence how we draw this map, because there are a lot of uses in the city that we don't anticipate changing because the city is largely but not completely built out. So in this lengthy narrative that we wrote, we have each of these future land use designations that correspond to a map category and color. So you'll see we have like suburban residential in this designation, and then we have suburban residential as this kind of light yellow color. And so with each of these, and again, we'll just start, they're arranged pretty much in what I would say from the least intense to the most intense category, with the exception of this public one. So kind of starting off, this suburban residential designation is really the larger lot single family development that we currently have in the city. Most of it's along G Drive or kind of out on the eastern side of town, where the Highlands are, and off of Grindle and Fun, and some of those streets over there where it gets a little hilly. It's not, for the most part, not really conducive to like a new subdivision or something like that. And we don't really anticipate a lot of that there. We have seen a few property owners who have sought to divide their property, or maybe look at doing something a little more dense, but we haven't, nor do we anticipate any like large scale subdividing or anything like that in these areas. These will, in our view, these will mostly continue to be low density residential developments. The one area here that might not fall into that category that I wanted to draw your attention to would be the Grand Rapids gravel site. So that's right down here on the very southwest corner of the city. This is where the Grand Rapids gravel mine is. It'll be there for, 10 years or something probably. But after that, it's gonna be something else. So we're not gonna show that as being, planned for like industrial use, even though that's kind of what the gravel mine is. We're thinking beyond that. And the plan that was presented as part of that application included the creation of that small lake or pond that they're gonna create there. And then they're gonna have a bunch of, single family and or duplex type developments along the north boundary of that. We left it in the suburban residential designation just because we think the overall density of that's gonna probably still be pretty low when you factor in the entire 50 acres of that site. But again, we're certainly agreeable to something different if you think that's appropriate there.
So Andy, the intent was to have that as suburban residential, because you have the text about that land under traditional residential.
Oh, do I?
So I just wanted, that was one of my questions.
Okay, so yeah, you're right, I should
Okay.
move it. No, I'm glad you caught that. So that would be the other option, and part of that is just sort of looking at density, and so talking about the traditional residential designation. This is pretty much your platted single-family neighborhoods in the city that you have right now. So all of this sort of brighter yellow that we have along, Sibley and all of that stuff along Valley Vista and Jane Allen and Carolyn and all those residential neighborhoods is all sort of the traditional residential. We have some traditional neighborhoods here on West Street, and on Pleasant Street, and on Center Street, that's kind of on the south side of Maine. And then all the old platted neighborhoods of the city on both sides of the Flat River all kind of fall into this traditional residential designation. That mostly corresponds with your R2 zone, but again, we're looking at traditional platted lots here that are, 60, a lot of them are like 66 by 132. There are some that are a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger in there, depending on the particular plat. But that's kind of what we are thinking there in terms of just, again, residential development primarily. Single family and two family would probably work here, and there are some duplexes on some of these properties already. And then, yeah, so I will move that text so that section about the Grand Rapids gravel site is in suburban residential. We could put it into the traditional residential designation. I'm just not sure that it's going to have the density. But in terms of land use, if you're thinking that something a little more dense on that Grand Rapids gravel site might make sense, we could always change the color on the map and leave the text where it is. The next designation is the high density residential, that's shown in orange. Most of these are developed sites already, so there's a whole bunch of them. A lot of them are kind of on the outside edge of our Main Street corridor here. There are the apartments along Deborah. There's some apartments on the south side of Bowes Road. Snyder Manor would fall into this category over here. There is there's like a nursing home over here. What's that called? The Laurels of Kent. There's a little multifamily development up here, just north of Hunt Street. All of those are multifamily developments that are within, and we don't expect those to change. Most of these, I think, are in pretty logical spots given their proximity to Main Street. With all of these, we're sort of, the plan is written to encourage, connectivity and walkability and things like that. So these types of developments are going to be near commercial services, should be served by sidewalks and connected to other sidewalk systems so people can also get around without a car if they want to, or if they need to.
I got a question, Andy.
Sure.
It's easier to show you. So we have this space and this space. That's King Milling, and it's in white, and yet we have no marker for what a white is, right?
Yeah, so that was,
And I know the other side where that curve is you.
this is a railroad track right away over here.
Yeah.
This one, I don't know why this didn't show up as gray. It should be in that same industrial designation as everything else. I don't know why it didn't show up that way, but we will double check that and make get that corrected. So all of the King Milling stuff is supposed to be in this industrial future land use category, which also corresponds with their existing zoning, which is the same. We have 2 manufactured housing designations that correspond with your 2 existing manufactured housing park. We have, again, we're not proposing anything new there, nor are we proposing any changes to which we currently have. This one up here, that's just on the north side of Pleasant Street, I don't know that it has a name. And there's only about 10 or 15 homes in here. Then obviously there's the more significant one that's down here off of Main Street that we're all aware of. Again, no changes are proposed here. You don't have a lot of jurisdiction anyways, but I think it's important to show them on the map as a designation, and there is a corresponding zoning district as well. So the next one, and this is something that's new that doesn't show up anywhere on an existing, on an old plan, is this corridor mixed use. And so these are the areas that we weren't quite sure, so they didn't really fit neatly into one of these kind of simple categories. And so thinking about some of the development that is on both the east and west side of the downtown along Main Street, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so you can see. So this is the area where, if you recall, we rezoned some of these properties and some of these properties a few years ago to that C1 neighborhood, neighborhood commercial that also permits residences. And so these little stretches are kind of a interesting little mix of different uses. For the most part, and maybe with the exception of Bed and Baker, which is right here, these are all fairly, they're either residential properties with houses on them, or they're fairly low intensity uses. Like I think, so like the Builder's Fireplace is on one of these sites in here. There's a couple of restaurants in here. Just some other little stuff, but it's not like, you know, large scale development like you see farther out on West Main. And so this plan, you know, we weren't necessarily inclined to say, no, we need to convert all of this to commercial and, you know, get these houses out of here and change it all to commercial development. When we rezoned these properties, it was with the intent of allowing and encouraging those people to fix up their properties, to improve them, to, you know, expand their houses if necessary, or do whatever. So this is sort of encouraging and continuing that. And then over on the west side of downtown, it's kind of a similar mix of uses. So we have some residences, we have a restaurant, the church is out here, a few other things. So again, this is same type of concept where we're thinking mostly kind of small scale mixed use, you know, single or 2-family or multi-family residential development could work here. But, you know, commercial might make perfect sense too. And from a zoning perspective, there's a few different zoning districts in play as well. On the east side, most of this so like these are zone C1, these are zone C3. This is Ben Baker's, who just redeveloped all this property down here. Some of these are zone residential. There's some others. There's kind of a mix of zoning districts and uses here. And so in the interest of sort of allowing for some flexibility here, we opted to create this corridor mixed use designation. And then the same thing over here. We don't have one zoning district that just applies to everything. Some of it's public facilities, some of it's commercial, some of it's mixed use, some of it's residential. And there's not really any perfect fit here. And I think a lot of different things can work in our opinion. So that's why we did this. Again,
What are the 2 purple areas? I know what they are, but what are they coded in?
So
Because there's some purple up here.
They're planned unit development and zoning, but
yep, so we're getting to that. So that one, so purple is, that is not.
It's not
okay.
on the key.
All right, so that was,
Mixed use something?
yeah, so this should,
it
yeah.
says planned unit development and zoning.
Yep, so these are the 2, well, 2, you have more PUDs than just these 2. So they were, so I think, so mixed use is what we were thinking. We could make this one high density residential since there isn't any mixed use going on here. This is the site where Copper Rock was approved last year. This is mixed use, and so we were gonna have a mixed use designation to reflect this site right here. We'll make sure that we update the legend so you can understand that next time.
Are those ones by the river there, is that the condos?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, so this is Riverview Flats, and then this is their parking area right here.
Okay.
And so this is split up into 3 properties. So this is the old building. This kind of weird H-shaped thing is the existing building that fronts on the river. Then they have their driveway and parking lot and accessory buildings. And then this is a 3rd parcel, which is the 3rd phase of that project that has not been developed yet. It's right on the corner.
Andy,
Yes.
would you look at that again, because where you're saying is the parking for those condos, I believe that is what we affectionately call the Oklahoma property that we, the city, purchased.
Okay. Yeah, how about the
Same thing, you have
On
this
the
side.
south side of Pine Street?
Yeah, we did shift the road 10 feet to accommodate them, to get them the setback they
Mhm.
needed, but everything from that edge of where that road comes through is city property now.
Okay, I thought they had some parking there, which is why I included it. Okay, we can make that change.
Okay, thank you.
And then, yeah, library is right here to the south of that, and then of course, school and all that. So moving on, so the other category, so the downtown category pretty much goes from the light at Hudson Street out to Jackson. This is your very traditional downtown that we've, spent quite a bit of time talking about. Here, the plan emphasizes the same as it has before, really, which is mixed uses, walkability, multi-story buildings, parking on the street, parking behind buildings, in the rear yards. The general commercial is pretty much just west of Center Street along Main, and it pretty much just consists of properties that have frontage on Main Street with a few exceptions. Again, this is going to correspond primarily to our C3 zoning district, so just sort of your typical development out here that we have, and we've seen a fair number of site plans out in this area over the years. And then we have one industrial designation that encompasses all of your industrial property. This is D&D trucking. We have a kind of a hodgepodge of stuff down here. It includes just kind of some general, there's some shops, there's a marijuana grow operation, there's Ronda Tires over here on the corner of Valley Vista and Bose, if I recall correctly. There's some other just kind of, none of it's really heavy industry down here, right? It's all just kind of shops and, workshops and things like that. We also have, Atwood up here on the north side of the city. We have the food processor right here. I'm blanking on the name of these 2 industrial properties, but all this is kind of in the same zoning district and the same future land use designation. Again, these are major employers in the city. We're not proposing to change any of those at this time. Most of this down here, including this on the other side of Broadway, this is mostly King Milling. There's a few industrial, shops on the north side here. This is like auto repair, and there's some other kind of little things that are, again, very light industry over here. This suggested that we keep that. This one is Pure Forms, I believe, and then we have, again, as you know, there's a few small industrial properties kind of on the south side of Main, a block off of Main Street. And they've been there for years, and again, all of these industrial businesses are, operational and, significant contributors to the city. And we're not proposing to, change those designations very much either. And then public is everything owned by the city or the schools. So we have the middle school and the elementary school and city parks and the cemetery and everything in the river. And all that is all going to be within that public designation. We don't anticipate those changing hands or being used for any different purpose. The one thing that I will add, that if you look at the old future land use map and compared to this one, is that the old one had a lot of the religious institutions on there as kind of a public facility. We opted not to do that just because it's, in our view, probably more likely that we would see a church property be sold or redeveloped or something than it would be for a city property. And so while those facilities are certainly welcome to stay there for as long as they want, you know, thinking 20 or 30 years from now, if one of those does sell or does, you know, change hands or gets converted to some other kind of use, you know, what do you want that to be? And if we put it as just public or a public facility, I know that really helps a lot. So we opted to put all of those types of religious institutions, places of worship into an actual designation that isn't public because they're, you know, basically privately held and could be sold, you know, at any point depending on the needs of the congregation and everything else. Are there questions other than what we have discussed? I know there's a lot kind of to digest on here, and again, this is very much a first crack at it. We will make those handful of changes that we've talked about tonight, so we'll make the other, this King Milling site industrial. We'll probably, I think we'll put the condos up here, Riverview Flats as high density residential. We'll fix this little parking lot thing here and make that green. And any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I would have found useful, like a map of the future use plan in the same color scheme as the current use plan, just so you could look at it quick and just see like what's the biggest difference between future planning versus existing zoning. And I don't know if you could either, if you have that right off the cuff, if you could summarize that, or if that'd be something maybe you could show, or just.
Yeah, so I don't have the sort of the bound. So this follows your zoning boundaries fairly closely, but not completely, right? So all of this up here, all this suburban residential, there is a suburban residential zoning district, and most of these properties, all of this and all of this are in that same designation. Over here, the zoning map actually has a lot of this stuff zoned R3 instead of R2, which permits multifamily. We could absolutely look at doing something similar here. I think that would be a good discussion point either now or at a future meeting for the Planning Commission to kind of really consider if that type of zoning makes sense here. We don't have a lot of multifamily buildings in this area, and I think a lot of it's just because these are lots have been platted for a long time, and due to floodplain issues and some of that stuff, I think they lend themselves better to single-family development is what we've seen. There are a couple of duplexes out here, but there's not as many as you might think. All of this traditional residential is almost all zoned R2 on your map. The high-density residential, you have R3. These are all pretty accurate. Again, the big difference here is you have a lot of R3 over here on the east side of town. Corridor mixed use is totally new. So again, this stuff is all zoned all kinds of different districts. There's some C2, some mixed use, some R3, some public facilities, some C1 over here and over here. Downtown corresponds to C2, general commercial corresponds to C3. Industrial corresponds to both your light and general industrial designations. We didn't see a need on the future land use map to differentiate between like light industrial versus general industrial, because most of your industrial is pretty light anyways. So we just made one category here. But yeah, we can, you know, for the next meeting, we can provide something that shows kind of both, and even the existing future land use map, if that's of interest to you. We can kind of bring all three and